So today we're going to return to our story about Snow White, and this time, instead of focusing on colors and animals and plants and all of that stuff, we are instead going to be focusing on reading this from a feminist critique perspective. So what that means is we're going to be paying a lot of attention to the male and female characters and the way in which they interact with each other, as well as the different things that they are doing that contribute to seeing them as a man or seeing them as a woman. It sounds a little intense, but it'll actually become more and more obvious as we go through. So again, I'm going to start at the beginning. Once upon a time in midwinter, when the snowflakes were falling like feathers from heaven, a queen sat sewing at her window, which had a frame of black ebony wood. Okay, so right away, sewing is a domestic activity. And often women are seen as being rulers of the home, right? They usually don't go out. They do all of the cooking, cleaning, etc. inside of the house. And even though our female character is a queen and she should be royalty, right? She's still in charge of those domestic activities in the home. As she sewed, she looked up at the snow and pricked her finger with her needle. 3 drops of blood fell into the snow. The red on the white looked so beautiful that she thought to herself, if only I had a child as white as snow, as red as blood, and as black as the wood in this frame. So when she imagines the child that she wants to have, first of all, that's a stereotype of women, right? That we all want to be mothers and have children, right? That matronly, nurturing side. Okay. Additionally, she focuses on her child being beautiful. She doesn't say, I want my child to be smart. I want my child to be brave. I want my child to be strong. She wants her child to be beautiful, which shows a focus on outer beauty. Soon afterward, she had a little daughter who was as white as snow, as red as blood, and as black as ebony wood, and therefore they called her Little Snow White. As soon as the child was born, the queen died. So this shows that 2 good female characters could not exist in the story at the same time. Okay, if for one to come into the world, one has to leave. So not enough room for 2 good women. A year later, the king took himself another wife. I would just like to say really quickly that the language of took means to possess or belong, like property. So he took another wife. She was a beautiful woman, but she was proud and arrogant, and she could not stand it if anyone might surpass her beauty. She had a magic mirror. Every morning she stood before it, looked at herself, and said, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who in this land is fairest of all?" So again, we have a focus on vanity and outer beauty, right? As being the most important thing. Additionally, it's often a stereotype that women are very self-involved and that women compete with one another, right? That's what the entire Real Housewives franchise is built upon, that women don't get along with each other. So already in this introduction to the new queen, we realize that she is displaying these negative stereotypes. Stereotypes of jealousy and vanity and competition. To this the mirror answered, "You, my queen, are fairest of all." Then she was satisfied, for she knew that the mirror spoke the truth. Snow White grew up and became ever more beautiful. When she was 7 years old, she was as beautiful as the light of day, even more beautiful than the queen herself. Again, we have this emphasis on vanity and competition. One day, when the queen asked her mirror, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who in this land is fairest of all?" it answered, "You, my queen, are fair, it is true, but Snow White is 1,000 times fairer than you." The queen took fright and turned yellow and green with envy. From that hour on, whenever she looked at Snow White, her heart turned over inside her body, so great was her hatred for the girl. Again, right, this competition, She wants to be the most desired. And to her, beauty equals value. She summoned the huntsman and said to him, "Take Snow White out into the woods. I never want to see her again. Kill her, and as proof that she is dead, bring her lungs and her liver back to me." Okay. The queen doesn't go about killing Snow White herself. That's too brutal, and it would require her to leave the house. So instead, she summons a man, right, to kill her, to do the violence. And based on what the queen wants the huntsman to bring back, it's going to be a pretty ugly situation, right? It's not like, oops, I pushed you off a cliff. It's like, no, we're going to slice and dice yet. So the queen doesn't want to get her own hands dirty. So she sends a man out to actually commit the violent act. The huntsman obeyed and took Snow White into the woods. He took out his hunting knife and was about to stab it into her innocent heart when she began to cry, saying, "Oh, dear huntsman, let me live. I will run into the wild woods and never come back." Okay, lots to unpack here. Again, women are often portrayed as being really emotional. And while I totally get crying when you're about to be stabbed, this is definitely playing into female stereotypes, right? She began to cry, her innocent heart, all of this kind of reinforces this idea of like an angelic female character. Because she was so beautiful, the huntsman took pity on her and he said, "Run away, you poor child." Okay, so we have two things going on here. One, the only reason, it seems, the huntsman saves her is because she's beautiful. So again, beauty equals value. Her life is more valuable because she is beautiful. He then goes on to think, "The wild animals will soon devour you anyway," but still it was as if a stone had fallen from his heart, for he would not have to kill her. This is actually very interesting because it totally goes against how men are supposed to behave. Men are supposed to be very violent, very harsh, very powerful and take action, but he experiences a bit of emotion, which is really quite unique. So in this way, the huntsman goes against male stereotypes by showing emotion. Okay. Just then, a young boar came running by. He killed it, cut out its lungs and liver, and took them back to the queen as proof of Snow White's death. The cook had to boil them with salt, and the wicked woman ate them, supposing that she had eaten Snow White's lungs and liver. Right? Again, literally consuming her beauty. The poor child was now all alone in the great forest, and she was so afraid that she just looked at all the leaves on the trees and did not know what to do. Then she began to run. She ran over sharp stones and through thorns, and wild animals jumped at her, but they did her no harm. She ran as far as her feet could carry her, and just as evening was about to fall, she saw a little house and went inside in order to rest. Again, she's running through these dangerous woods, and the only thing that provides her shelter is a house. So we're back to the domestic. And she feels comfortable in her place inside that home. Inside the house, everything was small, but so neat and clean that no one could say otherwise. There was a little table with a white tablecloth and 7 little plates, and each plate had a spoon, and there were 7 knives and forks and 7 mugs as well. Against the wall, there were 7 little beds, all standing in a row, covered with snow-white sheets. Okay. I'm going to stop here because what I would like you to do is continue to annotate this story on your own. There is still a ton to unpack. Pay attention to the language, right? How do the dwarves speak to Snow White? How does Snow White speak back to them? When the prince shows up, what is the language associated with him taking her coffin? Does anyone ask Snow White if she wants to be taken? Does anybody ask Snow White if she wants to get married? Probably not. Additionally, think about what it is that Snow White does while the dwarves go to work and like her place in the home. Lastly, really consider the stepmother and how she comes back and the different things that she does to get to Snow White, and kind of the emphasis on really throughout this whole story that beauty equals value. keep that in the back of your head, continue these annotations,